As a powerlifting coach and strength coach, that's wrong. You really consider yourself a special strengths coach. Could you
Yes, I
go into
believe.
that?
Yes, I think I'm a spatial strength coach. I know what explosive strength is, speed strength, how to develop strength endurance, how to develop endurance in a fatigue state, how to develop absolute strength, and most coaches don't. They call themselves a speed strength coach, but yet they don't know the velocity of speed strength.
So next question would be how, let's go through, let's just keep it to football for the most part. What, could you explain the differences in your feeling between strength, speed, strength, and how they relate to football players by position? So,
Well, of course, you have to be explosive, and that's the fastest rate of strength in as short as possible time. And you have to have speed strength, of course, to accelerate. But then linemen have to be absolutely strong, and that's where strength speed or slow strength become involved when two linemen collide at the line and fight each other for a second or two while someone's running around the end.
okay.
Incorporating the Olympic lifts, would you have all of the athletes train the same way?
In Olympic lifting, I would not do Olympic lifting. It's too fast, it's too dangerous.
Okay.
It's too technical. You want to be a good football player, a good Olympic weightlifter. You have to you can't have being a half-ass. Olympic lifting is too fast, like I said before, talking to you gentlemen before. Force is developed in 4/10 of a second, but after 4/10, can you maintain force? And Olympic lifting cannot. Olympic lifting is primarily a deceleration. You jump underneath the bar all the time. Even in a squat, you basically fall down and bounce up. So only Olympic lifting, it was a common to see people do slow eccentrics because there's no eccentric phase in Olympic lifting. Without that, the stretch reflex is the key. Why do Olympic lifters always do hang cleans? Because that's where the stretch reflex is set up. If Olympic lifting would work, you would just do power cleans off the floor. But you have to set stretch reflex, reversal strength.
Reversal strength. Okay.
Okay, could you explain reversal strength and starting strength and how you would relate that to American football?
Well, reversal strength is basically when you just watch two centers jump for the ball, they bob, jump, and that would be reversal strength. In lifting weights, a modified dive or a dive where you dive down, grab the bar and lift it up, or drop down the second time, pull, set the stretch reflex. And I've done experiments with football. I know you're going to ask me about box squatting. And I did experiments. Wilson had studies over in Australia that anyone's stretch reflex retained for two seconds, and highly skilled athletes to 4. Here with a Tendo unit, we proved it stays to 8, and that was on myself, and I was old then. I was in my 50s. But I could sit on a box for 8 seconds and get up at the same rate of speed concentrically as I did a normal box squat. Dave Tate, who is extremely explosive, we were roughly the same strength. Dave had a 935 squat and a 308. I had 920 weighing 235 officially. And Dave was super explosive. He could stay down for 5 seconds. The more explosive you are, of course, it will diminish faster. And that's what you're recruiting football. One of my pet peeves is, I mentioned to the guys that strength in football, you recruit speed and quickness. But yet that's all you want to train once they get there. You have to train what they don't have.
You spoke to us earlier about the overtraining aspect that you've seen with a lot of strength and conditioning programs. Can you give us your concerns with that and how you would change that as a strength and conditioning coach?
All right, I'm going to send back papers with you guys, hopefully. I wrote an article called A Multi-Year Training System, basic for Olympic cycle, but college sports is Olympic cycle, 4 years. And and I did this. It took a person from 400 squat to 1,000-pound squat in 4 years. Actually, this kid was a 16 and a 19 squat, 1,005. The only teen ever to do that. If you look at a 400-pound squatter, he trains it from 50 to 60% with some accommodating resistance for 3-week ways. The first week 12 week, the second week 12, the third week 10. And if you look at that, so that's a 400-pound squatter would train from 200 to 240. If you look at 240, if you got team players that squat 240, if they did 10 doubles, they would be doing 4,800 pounds of work, because the 10 doubles, 240 times 2 is 480 times 10 sets is 4,800. If you look at a gentleman like Ross here, years ago squatted 800, An 800-pound squatter would train between 400 and 480. All right, he squats twice as much as a 400-pound squatter. And as the training weights would be 400 to 480. 480 times 2 reps is 960 times 10 sets is 9600, exactly twice as much as a 400-pound squatter. Training must be monitored mathematically. This keeps you from overtraining. That's why I could bring a young child in here squats 400 and train with my guys that squat 1100. They'll never overtrain. The rest periods for football, you two gentlemen just went through this. I recommend 40-second rests in between sets. Football is a 4 to 7 second play. In college, slightly faster than the pros, you well know. So the 2 repetitions represent a play. The 40 seconds represents the rest between plays. Treat it like a game clock. Before you hit 40, you had to be squatting. I normally do 12 doubles the first week, 12 doubles, 10 doubles. So that's essentially like 12 plays. And after that, they ran over and they did 6 to 10 doubles in the deadlift, the sumo style deadlift, to teach you when you learn to squat properly, you never push your feet down, you push them out. It automatically builds lateral speed, glutes, and hamstring strength. Eliminate hamstring pulls, increases lateral speed. And that's why we do it that way. But at that point, if you did 10 squats, 10 deads, that's 20 plays on a football field. And then for conditioning, we would go outside and do the prowler pushes. 10 seconds all out, 40-second rest from 10 to 20. And if they need power, strength-wise, it would be power walking to develop the posterior chain. But a couple years ago, I had 5 players in the Big Ten here, all different schools, and they said that was equivalent to playing more than half a football game. And it takes roughly 20 minutes. 25 minutes, we'll say.
We were talking earlier, about Missouri and some of their stages of training, how they got into the conjugate method. And you were talking about David Hoff, how he's trained with you since he's been 15. So you believe that, and we're not saying a brand new beginner, but a kid that has basic foundation and technique in those 3 lifts, he can begin to use the conjugate method. You believe that is best right from the start?
If you read Texas, they say the conjugate method, it was designed for advanced athletes. I believe there's only one way to train, the right way and the wrong way. I believe you start them out with the conjugate system. In the very beginning, conjugate system is not even a GPP. Pulling sleds, doing push-ups, doing chin-ups, rope climbing, for instance, doing bounding, doing jumping, box jumping, and so forth. Abdominal work, flexibility work, mobility work, dexterity work. That should play a base. I mentioned before that a pyramid is only as tall as its base. If a child doesn't have a wide athletic base, he's not going to be a very good athlete.
So when it comes to college American football, you believe that 19-year-old kid can begin to safely use box squats with bands, chains, begin to do dynamic effort work if his technique and form is coached up correctly?
I started at 13. That's why they're paying you to be a coach. Yeah, you know, they pay people to be a coach to learn technique and procedures. And I start people here at 13 years old. Never heard a 13-year-old. I've never heard. No one's ever got hurt. I've got a little track girl I mentioned to you fellows, 15 years old, 115 pounds. She ran at 461 seconds. And she could deadlift 185, and she box jumped 36. In 4 months, she deadlifted 285, sumo style deadlift, 225 for 17, and she box jumped 44, and she ran 56.83 at Miami University for a tryout. A 15-year-old girl can do it. 19-year-old freshman in college should be able to do this. Lots of power walking with sleds, lots of bell squat. Like I showed you fellas, you can go back and build up the glutes and the hamstrings. A lot of GPP. I wanted to broaden her base. I had Mo Robinson here years ago, Olympic gold medalist in the 400. And so I just look at Mo as a model athlete, and her name is Jasmine Green, and I tried to develop Jasmine Green into Mo Robinson.
Could you talk a little bit about your box jumps that you've been using with football players? You've had great success on. Could you go into those? And do you use those? Obviously, in football, we have to do movement skill, so we have to take that stressor into aspect with also our strength development. So where would you put that aside in that in a training of football athlete?
There's a couple ways. Paul Childers, who you know, a huge 225-pound guy. Paul actually would do box jumps as a warm-up before a workout. And Paul was a coach out of Buffalo. And so there's many ways to do it. I believe in resistance box jumping. For combat sports, you must use resistance. I use the same procedure as A.S. Premlin's weight charts. If you look at him, he prescribed weights at 70%, 12 to 24 lifts, weights at 80%, 10 to 20, weights at 90%, 4 to 7. All right, we normally do the optimals, which is dead in the middle of these, and I use weights. So if a person could jump on a 40-inch box and I wanted to train at 80, 80% of 40 would be 32 inches. All right, they would normally do maybe slightly higher for explosive power, up to 30 jumps, normally between 20 and 30 jumps, and they would use a variety of ankle weights, 5, 10s, and 20s, weight vests up to 125, dumbbells up to 70s. I told you my friend John Stafford, 832 deadlifter, would do sets of 5s, around 5 sets of 5 with 70-pound dumbbells on a 36. He could reach up and touch a little bit over around 11.6. That's a 1.5 foot higher than a basketball rim, and he had no athletic ability at all, but super explosive. That's what I claim. I don't claim to make an athlete. I claim to make a more explosive athlete. So we rotate the jumps every time. You could have a record with 125-pound weight vest on a 24-inch box, we'll say, trying to raise an inch at a time. Always train optimally. Try not to let the fellas miss. But the next time you come in, you change the box. That's the conjugate system. Next time we might use heavy dumbbells, heavy weight vests, heavy ankle weights. You get records in all sorts. So after a 3-week wave with weights, at 3 weeks, you'll never get any stronger, never get faster. Take all the resistance off and just check their box jump. I prefer jumping over Olympic weightlifting because that is explosive power. Jumping is defined as explosive power. If you look at the World Atlas of Track and Field Exercises or explosive power and jumping ability, it says just that. And also I was mentioning Dr. Verfashinsky, who you know about, and several other coaches, tremendous in the plyometric and explosive power field. In their books, you do not see Olympic lifting. You see jumping off the knees. I'm huge jumping off the knees with weights. First of all, you set on the floor. I'll describe how this goes. I've got a tape I have to have edited for all coaches. It's a coaching guide I'm coming out with. Sit on the floor and press overhead. That develops all the muscles for running and jumping. Secondly, get down on the knees, jump onto your feet like you did. Thirdly, pick a barbell. And you work up, let's say, a goal of 135 pounds. And once you start to, when you get to that, to put a barbell across your thigh, jump into a power clean, off the knees. When you master that, jump into a power snatch. And for very athletic work, because it's repetition, you jump into a split snatch, which no one does anymore. Jump into a split, drop back down, split the other leg, drop back down, split the other leg. I trained a fellow, John Harper, in high school. He threw 170 in high school discus. He could jump onto his knees with 170 on his back. He has done at the time he had done 265 when in college. He weighed 265. He could get down on his knees with 265 on his back and jump onto his feet. He throws around 210 right now in college. As that went up, that was a straight indicator how far the discus would go up. Just like the shot put, when the better they push your behind the head, it's a straight indicator they can throw farther. That's why we use the conjugate system, as you know, where there's builders and testers. Like, for instance, if I steep incline more and did a heavy jam, my bench press was up. You might, if you pull off pin 2 in a power rack or pin 3, your deadlift off the floor is up. You've got developers and you've got builders. That way, you don't have a psychological bearing of always going in and trying to defeat the same enemy. And the body runs on 23-day clocks, if everyone knows this. So if you look at a 3-week wave, it almost coincides with that, minus having someone come in and test you, because it doesn't matter if we did it properly. The game time might be on your optimal high, but it should be 3-week waves.
Coach, can you talk to us a little bit about how you monitor recovery in your athletes?
Well, recovery is easy. People many times, ask me about drug use, and they ask me about training young children. They ask me about training women. We have the strongest of all of these things in the world. I have the strongest woman pound for pound. I'm probably the strongest old man pound for pound. We have the strongest gym of all gyms, and none of this matters because, like I said, I mentioned earlier, a 400 squatter does so much volume, a 500 squatter does so much volume, a 1,000-pound squatter, it keeps you from overtraining. I'm not asking you, you go out and you'll take your top athlete, expect the rest of the team to follow them. That's overtraining. I do it mathematically. Weight training is mathematics, physics, and biomechanics. So when you understand those three, proper technique and so forth, the rest is limitless what you can do. And when you, like if you're a 400 squatter, you have to move the bar about 0.8 meters if you use tendos, which we don't. We know what all this is. It's the first one in America to use a tendo. And and he squats 600, he would still move his bar 0.8 meters per second. How do you gain 50 pounds? For every 50 pounds that you gain in a squat, if you look at the chart I give you, you'll see your volume goes up 600 pounds, straight up to infinity. You get stronger by doing max effort exercises. The heavy, hard, out of the groove exercises make you strong, and with the speed on one day and the strength on the other, that's how you raise.
From the standpoint of time in the college setting, and we talked about this, your guys don't train for a long time, and we were talking about this at breakfast. Coming from competitive powerlifting, I said most of my workouts, I like to be out of there in 45 minutes. So take a dynamic effort method squat for a football player at the beginning of 3-week wave. Would you still recommend? You would still recommend 12 doubles. And for a football player who's in a training for strength, speed, or speed strength at that time, how long should that approximately take? So,
you got a clock, 40 seconds, and for speed strength, strength speed is going to be slightly slower. And but you guys did it. You did 10 doubles every 40 seconds. So that's 2/3 of that's 6 minutes and. Slightly over 6 minutes for 10 sets of squats. The deadlifts are 30 seconds. They did sets, so that's 3 minutes. That's 13 minutes. And if you want to do 10 power push, it's 23 minutes. You've got plenty of time for box jumps, or you got plenty of time for anything else. The Bulgarian weightlifters were the most successful of all. They had nothing but model athletes. I had the weightlifting team doctor for the Olympic weightlifting team spent time here. And basically their workouts lasted 45 minutes. That's where serum testosterone was as high, would fall, as they take a short period and they would come back and do another workout like that. Well, we're not Bulgarian weightlifters, and that's the problem in America. Everyone thinks they are, and we don't have anyone who can clean a Bulgarian gym. That's why we're not model athletes. You're trying to be a weightlifter at 6'2", and you should be 5'2". I tell people all the time I love basketball, but I'm not in the NBA. There's a good reason for it. So that's that monitoring training and how fast. So like I said, see, at that point you could do box jump. You could come back for a second workout and do jumping as well. When I train football players for combine, they come in, they normally squat, they'll come back in the second, then they'll go out there and do football drills. They do not run. Nobody ever runs here. But they'll go do lineman drills, linebacker drills, whatever your position is, DB drills, whatever that is. I have no idea, but that's what they do. But then they come back at night and we do the jumping, the battling chains, conditioning, and power walking. The power walking is essential to success. And one way to I had a Ohio State football player. You may meet him tonight to verify this. I had him 2 months. He didn't want to train for the football team. He wanted to train here. And so I had to go up and see the line coach. And the line coach told me, says I had to have him back in football condition. He's going to do an internship here. I says, I'll send him back in better shape than anyone on your team. Never ran him in 2 months. And one thing, he did exactly what I said, plus a lot of power walking, a lot of box jumping. But one thing we did, and I got this from rugby teams from overseas. I would put a 125-pound weight vest on him and many others, 20-pound ankle weights and Indian clubs or kettlebells. And I'd send him out for a half mile to 2.5 miles. They thought that was the greatest conditioning they've ever done. He went back. There was two players on the line test, whatever the conditioning test. He was 1 and 2 to pass. Didn't run one time in 2 months. You run ball players in the ground. I mean, you can turn the tape off now, but this is my theory. Don't turn the tape off. They're all of you. Football is 4 to 7 seconds. It's not gassers. Why do you see guys run gassers all the time and a defensive end picks up a fumble, runs 20 yards, and passes out in the end zone? So much for the gassers. You're trained the wrong energy sources. Football's a knock your ass out, back up, knock you out, back up, knock you out, back up, knock. Many times you can do that, the more successful you'll be. You're building endurance athletes. When you run them, you're taking explosive athletes and turning them into endurance athletes.
That's one thing. I've been reading about and studying especially with throwers. Begin to working with throwers there at Purdue, and one thing I started seeing on a lot of Russian texts that you did see in a lot of American stuff was power endurance. They talk about, and I've talked to the throwers how they might have to go 20, 30 minutes in between throws due to a meet, very similar to powerlifting. Could you speak a little bit about that, since there's not a lot of American text on that, on power endurance? Your thoughts on that outplays of football, athletics in general?
Well, that's exactly why I want you to do the short rest periods. Because if you had a Tendo to prove it, you would see his 12 set was. Did you not feel your 10 set was just as explosive as the first?
So good.
You start raising weight, where you're using like 2 1/4 in a 140-pound band, you're going to run people off the field. I've talked to coaches, NFL people about this, NFL strength coaches, and they agree with me 100% that what I say would be. I said you could run a play every 20 seconds. But they said the problem would be the coaches couldn't get the plays in. But that's not my fault. I did my job. Like a guy, I noticed one thing about MMA, it's all offense. And they'll kick your ass for 3 5-minute rounds or 5 5-minute. It's not like boxing. You're not leaning up against the rope. You're not running. It's all out force aggression. That's what football is. There's nothing general on a football field. Like I said, football is a max effort sport. So no one can tell me you shouldn't do max effort exercises. Football's max effort. You don't do anything. If you did something easy on a football field, you jerk them off the field, right? You don't run as fast, tackles hard, you're jerked off the field. It's all max effort. People tell me, they argue, many people say, well, Lou, you're a powerlifting coach. All you want to do is strength, strength, strength. And I told these guys that when I've been to Green Bay Packers, I've been to Seattle, you guys been everywhere. But when I was at Green Bay, and then I had to go to Browns camp over and over and over when Davis was there, I said, oh, football players are fast. Yeah, I hear that all the time. When I was out there 10 feet from them and saw how fast football players are, it hit me in the head. I realized, Jesus, these guys are really fast. I've never seen anybody could run and turn that fast. People don't understand how strong people, what strength can do to people. It can nullify technique many, many times. People don't understand what superior strength is. Why? Because they don't have it. I didn't have the running speed. They don't have the strength.
Can you expand on what we talked about in terms of learning to turn the right muscles on at the right time?
Yeah, it's a back chain. That's the way it works. What I simply say, I always say this because everybody gets it. If I walked up and smacked you in the face, you'd block it 10,000 times. I do it over. I plaque you, block it. So when you lift, and for squatting, the lower back and glutes and hips and hamstrings have to be strong. So you take a weight out, you have to stick your ass out and arch your back. If you're standing in limbo, don't know which way to go forward or backwards, I'm sure you've seen, you got problems. In the bench press of arms, when you take the bar down, you got to start with your arms. If you start with your pecs, you're going to tear a pec off. So you got to build the right muscles, and that builds coordination and makes the body work efficiently. It's very important to have the right muscle, the strongest. When if you're super strong in the front, you're going to sit forward and squat, and you're going to get injuries. If you're super strong in the back, you set to the back, right?
So can you go on that? We just need to simplify it a little bit. Could you go on that and say, so when we are training a squat for American football or athletics, our primary emphasis in that is to build the muscles of the hips, glutes, and hamstrings, correct?
And lower back.
Lower back.
When you build up the lower back, which everyone seems to be afraid of, you will eliminate hamstring pulls.
Now, you talked earlier, and you had us doing some sled stuff for the upper or for the lower back, and you talked about the lower back was primarily in an endurance area. Could you explain that a little bit?
Well, lower back, migrant workers pick fruit and peanuts and you name it every day of their life. They never had back problems. They bend over, put it in a basket, bend over. They don't have back problems. The lower back basically is comprised of ligaments and tendons. You tear a muscle, it gets black and blue. You hurt your lower back, it's sudden river. I've never seen a black and blue lower back. Why? Because nothing but ligaments and tendons. Ligaments and tendons have small blood supply. So you have to pump blood into them all the time. Now, that's why we use reverse hypers all the time. A lot of sled dragging. And we showed you exercises for the wrestling team where we do a lot of good mornings with a head harness and slow, methodical like that. It builds from the neck all the way down to the tailbone of you. What you felt in the upper back, and that tells me your upper back is weak. Okay. Like Jeff, he was squatting and fall down like his glutes won't fire in the bottom. And I noticed that right off. But I did leg presses 3 times this week because I broke my lower back twice. I never feel my freaking legs. I feel it all in the hips. It's just like him in reverse. You know, so that's what that's what I know. I know what's wrong with you because I know what's wrong with me. So you got to build. I just try to hit them all the time until I finally get them to work somewhat.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
We see a lot of stuff now where there's a lot of moving to single leg movements, and part of the justification for a single leg movement is it bypasses the core and the lower back because that's the weakest area, so you can overload the legs without the core and lower back fatiguing, which would seem to me counterintuitive because
It is
it's become very popular in our profession.
very popular and no evidence to prove it works. The Bulgarian weightlifting coach is here. He asked me questions. Why does Americans want to squat on one leg when they can't squat on two? And that's my theory. You know, when one leg's off the ground, that's a chaos. You have to have both feet on the ground. That's where balance. Foot's off the ground, you have no balance. And their theory sounds illogical, except like you said, they're bypassing the area that needs to work. Why would you do that? Why would you bypass what needs work? How about training lower back? Power. If you look at sprinters, they got records crazy. Look like 800-pound deadlifters. Comparably, they don't pull very many hamstrings. I got a call. So whoever it was I talked to, when the Giants played in the Super Bowl a few years ago, I get a call on Sunday. It's the Giants. So I go, what? Don't you guys have a ball game? They're laughing at me, They go, we'll get some reverse hypers. I said, okay. So I asked you a question. I said, you guys train your hamstrings all the time? He says, yep. I said, you pull them all the time, right? He goes, yeah. I said, you stretch them all the time? He goes, yes. I said, you pull them all the time, right? And he says, yeah. I said, you ever train your lower back? He goes, nope. I said, that's why you pull hamstring. It's as simple as that. It's all connected. That's where they connect. You have a nerve, and you have the sacral nerve runs from the top of the glute right all the way down in through. When that muscle is not conditioned or stretched or strong, it will pull a hamstring.
Did you go into some exercises you feel that are best for those
Sacral ligament.
for football players, wrestlers, combat athletes for training low back? Just some ones that we could use in a collegiate setting.
Well, okay. Of course, reverse hyper, just regular standard back raises. Like good mornings for high reps. Like good mornings staggered. We do. I have a lot of MMA guys stop by and wrestlers. Guys in the world Greco and freestyle team, and I have them do walking good mornings. And they'll step out with normally use stage squat bar. Step out, bend all the way down to where their chest almost touches their knees. Stand back up and step out again. They never bring their feet even. They have to step out every time. All right, but it's a tremendous conditioner. I'll take you guys out. It would absolutely kill you. I had professional rugby players come here. It got down to that fire thing, and we had to go bring it back. A 220-pound guy from overseas. It's rough. Only MMA guys can ever go down and bring him back. Maybe they hit too many times in the head, But it's grueling, and that's how we do it. And like you said, the sled dragging in general, if you drag enough laps with the sled, you'll start to notice your lower back is pumping up. Many people, while you're on sled drag, people ask me, why don't you run with the sled? Read a freaking book. It says if you run with resistance, you distort running form. Ben Tabasic invented the parachute, but he said it distorts running form. It takes you out of balance. He invented the darn thing. Why do I walk with the sled? Because every step is a start. It eliminates deceleration. You notice when you walk with sled properly, you feel the jerk. Every step is a start. If you go 60 yards, which I recommend for football short sprints, from their recommendations, sprinters and football players, the last step has to be as strong as the first step. If you did 10 trips of 60 yards, the very last step of the 10th has to be as strong as the first on the first.
You mentioned how your combat athletes don't experience many shoulder injuries despite being constantly thrown to the ground or being in a compromised position, the shoulder girdle. Can you explain why you feel that they don't experience as many injuries as your typical athletes?
Well, improper weight training. Even though, I don't think the bench press is outside of putting muscle on someone to keep them, cushion them from being hurt, is a good thing. But they do lots of, they do a lot of kettlebell cleans and presses. They do a lot of battling ropes and chains. I do a lot of battling chain here, a lot of Indian clubs, and a lot of bag training where they'll swing bags in their hands. And I'll have you guys do this. I'll show you if you've never done it. And I believe that's why.
Okay.
And it just doesn't make any sense that they don't have labrum injuries and football players do.
Okay.
So you believe those exercises, Indian clubs, ropes, things like that will help reduce labrum, the rash of injuries in American football?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, one thing about Olympic lifting, when I did have fighters here, like I had Kevin Randleman, he would use 225. He would power clean it, but would not let him touch his body anywhere. Drop it to a hang clean it, push press it. He did 225 every 30 seconds for 10 minutes. That's a conditioning drill, but that's more or less for your wrestlers, okay? But I never let him touch the bar. You know, barbells, you know, you make a barbell cooperate, and your opponent's not going to cooperate with you. So I would never let him if I did Olympic lifting, it would look terrible. They never touch a bar, but you'll be strong as hell. You would become strong and not technical.
Can you talk to us about grip strength that you mentioned to us earlier this morning?
Well, basically, I get my grip strength comes from batting chains. I like the chains. Rope. I use a batting rope for a minute 15. I'm 63 years old. I don't have that much time. I could do a batting rope for 3 hours for money. I went to a big rope because my buddies, national judo coach for 7 years, said get big ropes because that's better for wrist control. 50 minutes, and so I'm coasting through that. So I went to half-inch chain. And normally what I do a couple bouts of 15 minutes at a time, and I pretty much do it like this, standing up. I do it like this. This is about the cadence I use. I'll pull them to me, I'll hammer curl them like this, but turn my wrist like this. The bigger rotation you make, the greater will work on rotators. And they work as traction. Same thing. People don't understand any club works as you have centrifugal force with any club. So it tractions out the joints as you build range of motion and pump blood into the soft tissue. And the fighters, one of the best ways, believe it or not, like Carl Gotch, a famous fighter, if you ever heard of him, but he was famous, most famous in Japan. And he would take wet newspaper, set it on a table, and just pull the wet paper. You got to have strong fingers. If you start doing wrist curls, you get bigger forearms, fatter hands, and a worse grip. You have to train your fingers. All right? I do a lot of stuff in gravel. You can start with bird feed. Put your hand through bird feed and open and close it. It's opening in it. If you take your own hand, you can squeeze it hard, but you can't open it up. So you want to learn to open up your hand to build closing strength. And we got grippers. You notice our gripper. A lot of guys use it. They pick up hex dumbbells like this. And, of course, we don't use straps very often. We seldom ever use straps to do anything, so we're just grabbing onto bars. And a lot of things, if you, like judo players and samba have gis. And they have the greatest grips of all. And because they grab onto the gi. So you guys have sandbags and stuff. Mm-hmm. Get it where they have to grab on and pick it up like that now to build a grip if they need grip.
Very intriguing. Here's going to be a question. I'm going to come from this angle. It's probably a little controversial. Talking about Olympic lifting, we know you're not a huge fan of it. In our profession, especially American football, it may come down from a head coach, just from that old football, like you were talking about the grandmother, wanting a test from a hang clean, from a football coach, wanting to test the hang clean, wanting to see those numbers. How would you go about increasing those numbers? Not from a technical, from a strength standpoint.
I mean, if I had to,
stronger. If this
is an Olympic weightlifting gym, I'd be the strongest Olympic weightlifting gym in the world, like I am power. But how would I do it? They would do pulls with bands. They would do pulls with chains. They would do straight leg power cleans, straight leg power snatch. They would do heavy back extensions. I watched Juan Marbaziganowski get to 70 World Championships. He's a 6'8" Olympian. And from Poland, 148 do 5 reps in the back raise of 225. Lots of glute hams, lots of reverse hypers, lots of good mornings. And if I'm one of my ball players, I'd make them push press. I think that's one of the things they do. Olympics, they do too many push presses, right? I make them do push presses. And push press from the front, push press from the back. And I would use, every time I did it, they'd have to use a different grip. The next workout, they're using a snatch grip, this close grip. I'd make them do power cleans, power snatches down on 4-inch boxes to contribute to keeping the legs in the lift longer. That's what the Soviets did. That's what I would do. We can't match what they did in 1970s today. We've gone nowhere. Our last world record before they changed weight classes was 1969, as far as I know, Joe Doobie. We've gone nowhere. My pet peeve, coach, is if you go to a weightlifting contest, it's like going to a golf match. Everybody's telling you to be quiet. And when I go to a football game, you can't hear yourself talk. If you go to a power meet, you can't hear yourself talk. You got crazy people doing crazy things. That's what I want my athletes. I want some psychological warfare going on when I lift weights.
You were talking about football and wrestling being a sport of combat sport mentally. Back to kind of the crazy people on the edge. Can you talk about how training, if you were in our shoes building, I hate this word, but mental toughness. Could you go into that a little bit, how your training reflects that?
I hate the word mental toughness too, because there's two kind of people in this world, prey and predator. You better find out which one you are. And but if you did, I would cut the rest periods down. I'd make the workouts more intense by cutting rest periods down. You know, I'd take them out here and make them do. I could kick anyone's ass about it, James. They won't even go out They won't even go out there. And people say, "Why do I do it?" I said, "Because I can." But I could get in a mental state where nothing. You know, I take a lot of pain, and I've always been that way. I was born that way. I don't think I was made that way. I mean, I was fighting in the first grade, kicked out for fighting. 14 years old, I had a restraining order for violent behavior. So I was just naturally that way. As I got older, and actually weights gave me some self-esteem. They honestly did. And weights helped me, not just gave me self-esteem, you know. I mean, I could kick weights' ass, but I found they kicked my ass a lot more than I kicked their ass. Yeah, mental toughness, it's
I've always had someone to explain it to me, and they never can from a scientific standpoint.
you know, because you can.
A spinoff on that, just since we're talking about wrestling, and our wrestling coach definitely wants the guys' mental toughness increase, but they also need a lot of increases in their strength. Do you think if you we talked a little bit about rest periods. Do you think if you shorten down the rest period, you're cutting into their strength?
Well, they have to be explosive. Wrestling is quasi-isometric for a lot. You know, they got to have it all. Just like, you know, wrestling has to have a lot of quasi-isometric strength when they're grappling and they're pommeling. But what I would do, I would have them outside with the sleds. You guys went out to sleds where they're getting stronger, where they're running air through their body. And you did a lot of it. It's tough stuff. But you're conditioned when they're getting stronger. You don't have time for a conditioning hour and a strength hour. Combine them with sleds. They don't have to lift weights. They say Matt Hughes. I know everybody would know who Matt Hughes is. I know guys that know him and said in weights he's not very strong, but on a mat he's incredibly strong. And the same way with the guys come here, not very strong with weights, but you grab onto them, they're incredibly strong. 170, 185 pounders, just strong. You know, you talk about, I know a lot of things, Phil Jackson, he talks about having his players read books, if he can read, But I do think you should read books. And I think whatever it takes, if a movie, I can watch, I like real good martial art movies, like and Shogun Assassin. I like movies like that because I want to leave, I want to kill somebody. If I watch a fight to this day, and it gets over one, I have to leave my house, drive around for an hour. All right? I like revenge. I like To Call of the Wild. You ever read The Call of the Wild?
No, I'm not.
Read The Call of the Wild. About Buck the dog. Goes up and realizes, he's a big St. Bernard, and he gets lost. He gets in with a wolf pack, and he saw a dog get down, and when that dog got down, all the other boys jumped on him and killed it. So he realized, first thing I better do is never get down. Well, then he became the leader of the wolf pack. And, he was in the wild. He was the ass kicker. And as soon as he went back, and then he found his way back home, and he got back home, and he's on the farm, and he's thinking back, man, how rough it was for him, and he's just trotting through the field, and this big bitch of a dog comes up, it's a big female, knocks his ass over. And he goes, got to think about it. Like, this girl knocked me over. If I was in the woods, I'd be dead right now. And people ask me why I hang out in the worst parts of town in Columbus, because that's where I grew up. And there's always that fear factor. Keep my eye open. I don't want nobody's ever going to get a jump on me. And that's why I do that. And Jonathan Livingston Seagull, a simple little elementary book about seagulls. You ever read Jonathan Livingston Seagull?
No.
Well, it's about, seagulls aren't supposed to fly fast, right? But this guy just wanted to fly. Just like, you ain't supposed to lift weights. What are you doing that for? So Jonathan's trying to dive. His feathers get screwed up in the wreck because they ain't made to dive. And he got where he'd do 100, 150, and all of a sudden, but the elders kept saying, if you don't learn to be a seagull, we're kicking you out. Well, I got kicked out. So he got better and better and better, and he thought he was the man. I forgot how fast he could dive. And but he thought he was the man. He's on the beach one day, and he sees a gull down at the end, a silver gull. It was glowing silver. And he looked at the gull, and all of a sudden the gull was sitting next to him. And he goes, how did you do that? And he goes, perfect speed. And he goes, what's perfect speed? He said, perfect speed is being there. You know, if you take anabolic steroids, it has to work in the brain before it works anywhere. To stimulate the brain, to stimulate the body. And that's why when I lift weights to this day, when I look at a heavy deadlift, because nothing's going to cooperate with a deadlift, right? I look at it, I use a Zen state. I've done Tai Chi since 1970. But I look at that bar, and the only thing I know, it's there, and it's going to be locked out. There's no fight to that bar. That's how I operate. And I think that's how good people operate. They operate instinctively. You know, you don't see intellectuals on the football field. You know, they're in the laboratories. I'm not saying you can be dumb to be on a football field. Right. I'm just saying you can't think your way through it. You got to react your way through it. Like defensive players react better than offensive players. Is that true? You have to react to the play because you got a head start on them. Mm-hmm.
Yes, as you look back at your career, what has been give us some of the best lessons you've learned? I know it's been a ton, I'm sure, but if you could just give us one thing that stands out in your mind.
Okay, well, one, you guys know me, and like I said, I'll say anything for the Pope. I could care less. I got my opinions because I've done it all wrong, and I had to revert. No one was going to fix me but me, and really the lessons. One, surround yourself with good people. Never, if you run with the lame, you develop a limp. If you got somebody bad on the team, you get them the hell off the team. I don't care who it is, and that's one thing. And I started constantly lifting. I started Olympic lifted first, and I'll be straight up with you. Olympic lifted until 1966 when I was a kid, and I was getting drafted in the Army right out of high school when I was 18. I went to a power meet, and there was 11 guys in my weight class. I beat one guy, who's 55 years old. And I saw Vince Anello, Larry Pacifico, Melt McKinney, and George Crawford. All four of these guys became world champions and built like I'd never seen anyone build. I go, this is my sport. In the Olympic lifting contest, I got first, second, or third wherever I went. I beat a guy 55 years old. I come in 10 out of 11. I go, this is my sport. That's why I realized how much stronger they were and the different attitude they had, even in 1966. And the greatest thing I ever learned is in 1983, after breaking my back for the second time, I'm sitting in my house saying, what went wrong? And I go, what? I couldn't even figure it out. But I thought, well, Olympic lifters are explosive, so let me see what they're doing. I got all the books I could from overseas. And I realized I had gotten stronger, but I didn't lift anymore because I'd gotten slower. That's just a mathematic formula for disaster. So I started doing speed work, and when I got my speed up, all my lifts took off. I mean, I was already old. And I did my greatest lifts actually over 50 years old. I mean, at 52, I was ranked 4th in the open world, 3rd in the squat. At 54, I was 6th in the bench. At 57, I pulled 715 deadlift. That was 13th. Tied for, it was a 715. It was tied for 10th, but they beat me on time. And I'm 63. I just pulled 675 deadlift. I'm still total elite longer than anyone ever from February 73 to current day. Longer than anybody alive. But the key was going to the Soviets. I thought I knew what I was doing. I knew nothing what I was doing. I applied science to weight training. That happened in 1983, and I constantly making us better. Like our gym doesn't seem to, where most sports slow down at the top, ours seems to be accelerating. We learn more and more. I got better athletes, stronger athletes, and I'm learning more from my athletes how to make a better athlete.
There's one thing I forgot when we were talking about training. The timed sets, I've read a lot of your time sets, especially you've done a lot with throwers and stuff, and we were talking at lunch about how on average guys will gain 20 to 40 pounds in here. So for athletes, they need to put on a little bit of muscle mass. Could you go about how you do those, talk about those for a little bit?
All right, I got this. I believe it came from Corellin. And I think he told Alexis, who worked with Pizarenko, is that how you pronounce it?
Pizarenko.
Yeah, okay. And what they would do Olympic lifts from 1 to 3 minutes at a time. Never put the bar on the ground. So while I adapted it to powerlifting and grappling, where we'll squat for 5 minutes, 3 to 5 if you can do it. But dumbbell presses, for instance, up to 15 minutes. It's real slow. Like if you box squat, you sit on a box, you can sit there all you want. It's like you on my shoulders. Stand up, sit down, stand up, do a couple good mornings. Go halfway, stop, going down, sit down. And that builds amazing endurance and builds amazing amount of muscular conditioning and size. And that's where I got it from. Alexis, if you read in Science of Sports Training, sometimes we'll do 100 snatches with 100K. Do 1,000 steps in the wading pool. I do the same thing in my hot tub. I get into 100, of course, a leg curl in a pool is a leg extension, and I'll do 300 to 500, stuff like that, because of having the knee problems I had. They're fine. But I do a lot of conditioning stuff like that. I realized I got older, I had to do more. People think they do less, you have to do more. But the time sensor is tremendous, and it's basically for grappling in sports, ball sports. Gets you in good shape, builds you up. Just like if I put a 125-pound weight vest on those ankle weights, send you out here for a couple miles, when you take that off, you feel like you can fly, literally fly. But your conditioning is its way up. And, if you read experts, say walking will not increase any sport, even speed walking. Well, they obviously never did it with resistance, because all the guys love it. I'm only telling you what they tell me. Okay. And just I want to bring up one more thing about the speed squats for explosive. You're working on explosive muscular power, the speed pulls, and then of course the prowlers for conditioning, and the power walking to build muscular strength in the posterior chain and backwards. I showed you many ways, but the box jump. How do I never take a ball player when they come here? I never run them. How do I know if they run faster? If they jump higher, they run faster. Take that from any top sprint coach, and they'll say the same thing. That's how I do it. If they jump higher, it's straight up. They run faster. Because I don't want to run. I just don't want to run a kid in the ground. I think they practice. I mentioned before. This is my observation. I never played the game, and but I told them football. I've never seen a game that's practiced supposedly so many hours and played a very few minutes with the ratio of errors per minute. They make more errors than any sport I've ever seen with the amount that they practice versus the minutes that they play. And to me, it's just overdone. It's a law of accommodation. They do the same thing over and over and over. The only way you eventually can only get worse. You can't get better. I think you got all you guys. You got offensive players on defensive teams and vice versa, right? Just for different stimulus. I do a lot of stimulating training like that. A lot of drills and not, a lot of drills, but not so much running and stuff like that.
Well, we really appreciate your time. This experience has
Yeah.
been great for us, and we look forward to staying in contact with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys coming over, really.
Great.
I only tell you what I say because I've seen it work, and I got too many injuries. I don't want people to be hurt. I don't want people, when you're hurt, you don't make progress. And so many people quit. I'm just one of the dummies that never quit.
We forgot to talk about box squats and safety behind them. We need to cover that.
We do need to cover that.
All right. Box squatting. It's the greatest method of explosive power training and the safest of any. If you watch a guy squat without a box, now your players got lousy form without a box. They normally got terrible form. As the weights get heavier, you squat higher and higher. Well, a box, if I want a person to squat to this depth on a box, 1,000 squats later, they're squatting to this depth.
Right.
But I want to show you how to box squat. Box squatting, if you can see the scar, I have a complete ruptured patella tendon. I tore it off in 91, and I didn't live for 5 years. I trained but didn't live. And I came back, I had 821 squat. I was a top 10 squatter in 5 weight classes. After 5 years, in 96, I came out of retirement, and in 2000, or 97, but in 2001 or 2 or something, I squatted 920, which I said was the third best squat, over 50 years old. All box squatting. Another guy, we used to tour with the Greco-Roman team, Greco-Wrestling Roman team, and he had a Jim Hoskinson, 744 squat, and he hurt himself doing power cleans. And I mean, it's just the way it goes. Tore his patellas, both patellas, and ripped the quadricep tendons. I got him to box squat. First, pulled a sled, got him to box squat. 5 months, he squatted 500. I said, that's good, because that's what I did. 9 months, he had a 744, all-time best squat. 9 months, he came up here from Florida and squatted 890. A couple years later, he squatted 1107, all box squat. No injuries to his knee. Box squatting is a leg curl. When you squat, you stick your glutes out, sit on the box, so your shin is passed straight up and down. The only way you can get up is a leg curl out of there. Always drive your feet out. You never drive your feet down. Boom, just like that. It involves all hip, hip, glute, and hamstring, and abdominal muscles. As long as you have air, I've been in experiments at Ohio State University why people wear belts. People wear belts, but they didn't really know. When you wear a belt, it increases abdominal pressure, decreases spinal pressure. All right, so when you sit on a box, it's all in the abs. It has nothing to do with your spine. If your back hurts, what do? You go sit down. Well, I guess these people, these experts are telling you never sit down. Just stand up the rest of your life. But the first squatter, Pat Casey 800, picture behind me, raw, 1970. I just watched, what's his name? Wilkerson?
No, Wilkerson.
Wilkerson, squat 1,000 raw, box squatter, all-time record. The biggest squats in the world, 1260, 1250. Jeff Lewis, 1212. All of our guys, we're all box squatters. As a whole, we got the greatest group of squatters ever, and we're all box squatters. Box squat's the safest way. Train 2 Olympic gold medals, sprinters, box squat. Box squat's the best way to train. Makes you more explosive. I want you to think like this in common sense. When you squat, the body's got so much energy to lower itself, stop itself momentarily, and raise itself. Box squatting, you can break that up. That's why you break up the eccentric concentric chain. I can lower myself, sit down, gather myself, and come up. You cannot do that in a regular squat. You only got so much energy. All right, that's all I got to say.
Thank you.